Hello, everybody. I am so excited about today's live. I will be speaking with Melinda Morgan, who is an awesome life coach, and she has a podcast called Edified. And I've just kind of been binging it lately, and it's one of my favorite podcasts. So I'm so excited to talk to her. We are going to be talking about my latest blog post, which is called Why Latter-day Women Feel Called to Influence the World. And that blog post, I just published it Monday, and it has blown up. So if you haven't read it yet, you can just hear us chat about it today. And then you can also go check it out after this live. And so we're going to be talking about that. And we're also going to be talking about her podcast, specifically a couple of episodes that I listened to that have a lot to do with what I wrote about. And she has some great insights and great points. So I'm going to figure out how to, there we go, invite her to join me. And I think that this conversation is going to be really good. And so there she is.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome.
Just want to make sure that we have a good connection. So, okay, so I was also going to say to those of you who are here, if you have any questions or thoughts that you want to share, please chime in, and I will try to do my best to watch the comments. And Melinda, if you see anything pop up that you want to address or anything, let me know.
Awesome.
Okay, so I just mentioned the blog post that I wrote about that we're going to be talking about. And then I mentioned that you have a couple of podcast episodes as well. And I think they're number 6 and 7. Is that right?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, so so you guys can go back and check out her podcast, and I'll also link. So what I do with these lives is I save them to IGTV, but then I also publish them on my YouTube channel, which I'm just like kind of starting to do. And so all the links to like your podcast episodes, my blog post, your Instagram, like everything, I will link there if anybody wants to have those for later use. Okay, so I just have to say that as I've been like listening to your podcast, I'm like becoming your biggest fan.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
and also like I think we should be best friends.
All right. I
Is that
think
okay?
I cannot have too many of those, right?
Right.
Now, if you're a Coke Zero drinker, even better.
I don't like Coke at all.
Okay. All right.
But
Well,
that's okay, right? We'll find something else to drink
There's
together.
always chocolate.
Yes, okay, we're good. We both like chocolate. Okay, so I want to ask you, first of all, why do you think that, especially recently, women have been feeling this call within, from above, wherever they're feeling it? Why do you think that it's becoming so strong recently to influence the world? Does that make sense?
It does. And you know what? I've been giving this a lot of thought because I don't know if you remember this, but many years ago, when Elder, then President Uchtdorf, gave that talk about creativity.
I do remember that talk.
Yeah, the seeds of creation within us. And he talked about the anytime that we create something that is beautiful or that blesses the lives of others, you know, that we are influencing the world around us and the world within us. And I love that quote. And I think ever since then, I have been listening for the calls to come out. And we have been asked to create. We have been asked to share what's in our heart on all whatever means of social media that are available to us. We've been asked to be a light to the world. We've been asked to engage in this latter-day work of helping to gather Israel. And I think of all the calls that have come from our prophets and our leaders over the past few years. And then when President Nelson said that if we lose the moral, I can't remember the word he used, rectitude of the women in the church, then the world would never recover. And I feel like he is telling women, you are the key players
Yes.
in these latter days in being the light to the world and to bringing souls to Christ and to connecting the family of God together.
Yes, I love the way you put that. And I think it's important to remember that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be like an influencer on Instagram or, have 10,000 followers I remember when I was listening to that talk by President Uchtdorf, um, I think he specifically mentioned like gardening. And I'm not a gardener at all, but I thought, like anything that you do, a lot of women don't think they're creative or they don't think they have anything to offer, because they might not think they can reach a lot of people. But I just remember him saying like gardening is something that you are creating, and whether you realize it or not, you are influencing the world for good.
So, so true. Something that when I was recently talking with Nikki Olson at Nikki
Hmm.
Olson Coaching, she made a comment that has stuck with me and is probably going to become one of my favorite quotes. And that is, we have to be okay leaving the 99 to go
Yes.
help the one. So
Yes.
maybe your
So
influence,
good.
maybe your call is to influence and help one
One
person.
person.
And that's
Yeah.
awesome.
And maybe that one person is your child.
Hmm.
I know one of the reasons I've kind of started on this path that I'm on to help women realize um, what they can do to influence the world is because I have talked to many women who think that their only purpose in life is to be a mother or a wife. And if that doesn't happen, what are they good for? Or if that does happen and I have a friend who's a stay-at-home, I'm a stay-at-home mom too, but she's a stay-at-home mom and she's like, I really don't have any desire um, to like have a career or to have this like hobby outside of motherhood. She's like, I'm just a mom and I love it, but am I really helping the world? And of course, the answer is yes, but I think it's hard for a lot of women to realize that even if you are just raising your children in a spiritual home, that is so much more than we could ever ask for. That's what the world needs, right?
Oh my gosh, so true. That was the only thing since the time I was a child. And I wasn't
Yeah.
raised in the church or anything. I'm a later convert. But my whole aspiration was to get married and be a mom. I just wanted to be my
Uh-huh.
mother. And
Uh-huh.
and that worked for just a little while. And then it all went to Hades. Like the marriage fell apart. I was a single mom with no career and
Hmm.
no school. I had to do all that. Um, and I had to go on a different path. The path I wanted to be was an at-home mom. And the path I
Yeah.
ended up on was a career woman so I could support my 4 children.
Yeah.
But I think women are recognizing now that being at home mom, that is a career. You may
Yeah.
not get a paycheck in the mail for it, but it is a career, and it is a career that involves a whole lot of talent and a whole lot of patience. And it
Hmm.
is not an easy job, right?
No, no, it certainly isn't. And I think that just reminded me of one other thing that I just kind of learned this week is so with my magazine, Latter Day Woman, we're doing a deep dive study of the family proclamation to the world. And one part of it, well, a lot of it talks about the important work of motherhood. And the phrase specifically says like the primary role of women is to nurture their children. Or not women. The primary role of mothers is to nurture their children. And someone wrote to me and said, I always thought that that meant that you should. And that's also what I thought. I thought, obviously, like if there's circumstances where you can't, fine. But if you can, you should stay home with your children. But then this lady said, but then I looked at it um, like we're just responsible that it happens, if that makes sense. It doesn't
Uh-huh.
necessarily mean that you have to stay home and nurture your children, but you're responsible for the nurturing of your children. And if they're going to be nurtured better at a daycare or, you know, whatever it is, that might be, the best thing for them. Does that make sense? So it really opened up my eyes, and I was like, yeah, that's true. It doesn't mean that you have to do it one certain way. It just means that you're responsible for making sure that it happens.
Well, that's the plight. That is the guilt trip that a lot of single moms go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through it. Now
Mm-hmm.
I am responsible for the spiritual nurturing of my kids. At that
Mm-hmm.
point, I was not in a good spiritual place.
Mm-hmm.
My life had
Yeah.
just fallen apart. But when you're going to school and trying to get it and working and trying to support as a single parent, you're overseeing where your children's nurturing is coming from. And
Right.
yes, there's a responsibility there, but the Lord certainly doesn't expect us to stay home when we have to care for the physical needs of our
Mm-hmm.
family as
Yeah.
well.
You have to
So,
provide for them.
and I think there's a lot of guilt right now for
Yeah.
women who maybe they financially could stay at home, maybe,
Uh-huh.
but they're feeling this call to
Mm-hmm.
use their gifts and their talents
Mm-hmm.
to bless the world in maybe a different way, and they're feeling torn. Does this
Yeah.
mean if I spend time away from my children that I'm
A
being
bad mom.
distracted, or yeah, or I'm a bad mom?
Mm-hmm.
And I think finding that balance is a struggle a lot of women are dealing with right now.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so that was kind of off topic, but I just love it. So let's get back. I wanted to ask you, in your podcast episode, you said many, so this is a scripture that you quoted, and you said, many are called, few are chosen. And I love that so much because I think that we do all feel the call. Um, and so, why are only a few chosen? Will you
Well,
talk about
and
that?
I will, because that was the lie that I bought into for myself. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
many are called, but few are chosen. So, Mindy, you feel called to write a book, or you feel called to start a YouTube channel, but
Mm-hmm.
someone else is doing it and they're doing it
Mm-hmm.
way better. So, they were the
Mm-hmm.
chosen ones to
Mm-hmm.
succeed. You weren't chosen to succeed. And so I had that kind of why? Why, Lord? Why did you call me if you didn't want me to succeed? I had that
Mm-hmm.
question, and it really was paralyzing for me. But it
Mm-hmm.
was the idea that they're not, when the Lord said to me, why are they not chosen? Their hearts are so set on the things of the world, and they aspire to the honors of men. If your idea of being chosen means being successful in the eyes of men,
Mm-hmm.
then we have an issue, because the
Right.
reason you're being called isn't to rise to the aspirations of men or for the honor of the world. You're being called to serve me, and
Right.
you're being called to be a light to the world. There's a huge difference there in the why. And I think
Mm-hmm.
comparing my success by someone else's success, that was me taking my eye off the target. Your
Mm-hmm.
why has been lost now, because
Mm-hmm.
you've covered it up with
Yeah.
this doubt, because you are not the same as somebody else. So
Right. So,
I think the call is there for all of us who feel it, but I think
uh-huh.
the chosen part is on us.
Right. I was gonna say, so you're saying that it's up to us if we want to be the chosen, right?
I believe that, yes.
And you talked about something called call paralysis. So
Yeah.
we feel the call, but then we might face this call paralysis. So will you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I look at call paralysis as, well, first of all, anything that stops you from making forward progress. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, there were two things, and one of those was my inner critic that I affectionately named Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Sorry for the
And
Lucy.
when I listened to those podcast episodes, number 6 and 7, I listened to those first, and I heard you talking about Lucy, and you were like talking really mean about her, and I was like, this does not sound like Melinda Morgan that I know. Like, she wouldn't talk about someone like this. And then I went back to like the first episode, and you explain who Lucy is, and I was like, oh, okay.
Sorry to all the Lucys in the world. That is just that, they say if you give your inner critic a name, it is
Yeah.
easier to recognize and to talk to.
Yes, I've
And
heard that.
yeah, so that was just my little affectionate name for
Yeah.
her.
Well,
But
everybody knows now.
yes, it's nothing personal. I am nice. I'm a nice person.
Yes.
The debilitating comparisons is the thing that paralyzed me the most. And that is, what I look at the source of where that comes from. When we are comparing ourselves to other people who are maybe feeling the same call or a similar call, and then we compare our level of success to theirs.
Right.
I look at that as our adversary is putting that obstacle in front of us because he wants to create enmity between us and other people. Because if he can create that enmity, then that separates us and makes us feel isolated and disconnected from the group. And of course, the adversary wants us to feel that way because that's his story. He is separated from the group, he is isolated, and there is enmity between him and the family of God. So I look at that as anything that stops you from making forward progress is a paralysis of your call. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. And so as you were, as I was listening to you talk about this in your podcast episode, it made me think of some things that I've been working on to help women get over this call paralysis, even though that's your term. And so I asked a bunch of women, I was like, what are the biggest obstacles keeping you from fulfilling your call? And I just want to go over those 10 so there were 10 main ones. Of course, everyone is different, but generally these are the 10 that women were talking about. So just general fear, just kind of like you said, like the paralysis, you're just kind of frozen, not sure how to move forward. So general fear of offending people, right? When we want to righteously influence the world, we have to talk about hard things sometimes, and we have to talk about our beliefs, and we might offend those who don't have the same beliefs. So fear of offending people, fear of feeling inauthentic, fear of, or not fear, sorry, lack of money and know-how. So that specifically kind of has to do with sharing your gifts online. Is a lot of people don't have, well, they think they need money to do this, and this, to build a website, to have a podcast, to do all of these things. And so lack of money and lack of know-how, just like tech, it's hard to kind of figure out how to do some of those things.
Hey, I'm an old dog learning new tricks every day. That learning curve is steep for me. I call my daughter all the time, help.
Yeah,
Mom,
that's
Google
great.
it.
I was just going to say, you can Google anything. Back in the day when, like this is like over 10 years ago, when blogging was like really big, and I started a blogging design business, and I was coding and I was building websites, and I learned all of that on Google. I just Googled everything. How do you do this? How do you do that?
Wow.
And so really, like Google, you can figure out anything. But other obstacles that women were talking about were lack of family time, right? Just, I'm sitting here in my bedroom. I told my kids to not bother me. So feeling guilty about that. Lack of time of day, trying to sound, or not trying to sound promotional or preachy, right? You don't want to sound like you're on a Ramiumpto.
Always selling something, right?
Yeah. You don't want to sound like you're selling, or like you're spammy or things like
right.
that. Lack of confidence was a big one. Feeling obligated that you have to keep it all spiritual. I don't think it always has to be spiritual to share goodness and influence the world for good. It doesn't have to be spiritual. There's so much good out there to share. And then the last one is online saturation, which basically means you think that there's a ton of other people already doing it and doing it better.
Right.
So if that's you out there who feel like any of those are your obstacles, I just finished an ebook that is available on my website that I created to help women get over those obstacles. And so, and then I feel like you were talking about your call paralysis, and you named 3 things that I picked up on. You named desire, effort, and an I single to whatever it is you're trying to do, your call, your intention. It all comes down to kind of getting over those hurdles, right?
You know what? And those 3, desire, effort, and I single, that is my unpacking of Doctrine and Covenants, section 4. Mm-hmm. Because he said, if you have a desire to serve the Lord, you are called to the work. I mean, that right. It doesn't get more black and white, straightforward than that. If the desire is there and it's to serve the Lord,
right,
and it doesn't have to be a church related thing. Serving the Lord can be any way that we uplift, edify, help, serve, support others, right?
Yeah, I love that.
You're called. But then he says, thrust in your sickle with all your might. That implies a lot of effort is going to be. It's not going to come easy. Just because you feel the call doesn't mean the Lord's going to open the doorway and go, okay, slide right on into home base, right? There is so much effort.
And a lot of times when we see other people doing it, it looks easy. It looks like they don't have to put in very much effort, that it just comes. And sometimes that might be the case, but I would think that most of the time that's not the case. We're just not seeing behind the scenes, right?
We don't know the journey that got them there. And that is certainly the case with me, because 18 months ago, I started a YouTube channel for Come Follow Me. I thought I had this amazing idea that no one else had. I'm going to go do videos every week about Come Follow Me. And about 3 weeks into it, I discovered Don't Miss This. But before it was Don't Miss This, I discovered that Emily Bell Freeman and David Butler. And I was like, oh, they've got thousands of followers, and look, oh my God, and they're 2 weeks ahead. And I just went, oh man, who was I kidding? Who was I fooling into thinking I was supposed to do this? So there came that voice of the inner critic and that debilitating comparison. And it took me a while to learn, hey, they didn't just jump on YouTube and suddenly have, 5 to 10,000 followers. That was a process that had been coming for years. Years of being speakers at Time Out for Women, writing books and being, so yes, you're exactly right. That comparison, we don't know what got and it doesn't matter. That's the thing that I finally learned. What matters is, why are you doing what you're doing? Don't lose sight of the why. That is the biggest mistake I think so many people make.
And the one might just be yourself. If that makes sense.
That is a great point. That's an awesome point.
Yeah, you think you're being called to influence hundreds of people, thousands of people. Maybe the one is in that group. Maybe the one is your child, but maybe the one is yourself. And that's happened to me personally 100 times.
Jesus was willing to leave the group to go after the one. And I think we need to follow that footstep. If that's, we need to be okay with that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And it's hard. Okay. I want to finish up because we're kind of going long, but can you let's leave with you giving the 3 questions we can all ask ourselves if we want to be chosen. We feel called, we want to be chosen. So what are 3 questions we can ask ourselves to do that?
Ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because there's going to be a sacrifice in there, and it's going to take your time. It's going to take your energy. It's going to take maybe time away from your family. It may require some money, depending on what it is that you're doing, especially if you're starting a business. So ask, what am I willing to sacrifice to set aside for now in order to do this? Okay. And the second question I would ask is, what are you willing to risk? Because failure is always out there. Are you willing to risk failure? Are you willing to make an investment that may not, you know what I'm saying? What are you okay with risking? And then what is your version of all in? What does all in look like for you? Because it's going to be different for everybody. So you decide for yourself, I'm willing to make this sacrifice. I'm willing to risk this much. And I am willing, my version of all in is this. And then once you have that decided, then move forward with
Right.
that plan. It might change as you go. That's okay.
Yeah, of course. I love those. Those are great questions to ask yourself. So, okay, thank you so much. And so, do you like to go by Mindy?
You know what? Everybody close to me just calls me Mindy. It's my childhood name.
Oh,
Melinda
okay.
is my teacher education, Mrs. Morgan name, and my
Okay.
online name. I answer to them all, but
Okay.
since you and I are best friends now, you can certainly call me Mindy.
Okay. I was gonna say, what does your new best friend call you?
She can
Mindy it
call
is.
me anything she wants.
Okay, so will you tell us, so Melinda R. Morgan is your Instagram, right?
Uh-huh.
So will you tell us do you have a website?
I do. melindarmorgan.com is my website, and there
What's your,
is what started out as the Giving Virtue a Voice blog that is now morphed into, it's more the show notes for the Edified
okay.
podcast. So that's kind of, Edified right now is taken up the,
Oh, there.
oh,
Okay.
I guess, sorry, something. I just got interrupted there.
No,
I
it
am
just froze for a minute.
melinda.r. Okay, melinda.r.morgan is where you'll find me on Instagram, and Facebook, it's Melinda Morgan. There's also Edified Insights for LDS Women on Facebook as
Okay.
well.
And that's what your podcast is called, Edified Insights
Edified Insights for LDS Women.
Women. And it's so good. It is so good. I'm not just saying that. So go check out that podcast. And then if you want to rewatch this and find all the links that we talked about, I will upload this video on my YouTube channel, just Becky Squire. I'll do that later today. Okay. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much
much.
for being here. It was so fun to
Thank
talk
you.
to you.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed this a ton.
Good, good. Okay. I will talk to you guys later. Thanks.
Bye.